This is CBC Here and Now.
For years, Vian Timmons has said on her CV and professional bio she was part of a First Nation, but she says it has never opened any doors for her.
I have never claimed Mi'kmaq identity, and I'm not going to.
That story coming up on Here and Now.
International Women's Day for Iranians in St. John's, the perfect occasion to speak about conditions in their home country and what it's like to be a woman there.
We kind of encourage them to keep fighting, to keep going.
That's just ahead on Here Now.
Leveling the playing field for our athletes amongst their peers across the country.
A few tennis clubs in St. John's got some funding today from the provincial government to upgrade some of their facilities, which will allow them to make upgrades just in time for the Canada Games. I'm Armeen, and I'll have that story coming up. Woo-hoo!
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. For years, Vian Timmons has been a defender of Indigenous education. She became president of Memorial University in 2020, and at the time, many in the community were excited at the prospect of an Indigenous president. Now, a CBC News investigation is raising questions about the clarity of her claims in the context of the complexities of Indigenous identity, descent, and what it means when a person of high esteem claims membership with a First Nation. Ariana Kelland has our feature report.
It wasn't until our Education Award recipient was an adult that she learned about her true cultural lineage, but it set her on a path that would impact generations of learners.
The Inspire Awards, designed to be one of the most prestigious awards by Indigenous people for Indigenous people.
Your 2019 Inspire Award recipient.
Center stage was Vian Timmons.
I was telling my father about my work, and he said to me, "You know, Vian, we're Mi'kmaq." And I said, "What are you talking about? I was in my 30s. And he said, "Well, we're Mi'kmaq, but I was raised to be ashamed of it. And so I hid it all my life."
She was nominated for the award based on her work defending and advocating for Indigenous education.
Every day I find new strength in knowing who I am. I'm still learning my own, and every time I learn something new about my culture and my history, I'm excited and I'm sad. I'm sad that I wasn't raised knowing it, but excited that I have the opportunity to learn more.
But Vian Timmons wants to make one thing very clear.
There's never been a time that I have ever said I am Mi'kmaq.
Indigenous identity and how it's defined can be complicated. It's nuanced and sometimes uncomfortable. In recent years, high-profile individuals, particularly in academia, have had their indigeneity claims scrutinized. CBC's investigation was prompted by questions from individuals right across Canada.
Well, I'm of Mi'kmaq heritage. I'm proud to say that I am of Mi'kmaq descent.
Timmons has been public about her ancestry, her father's shame, and how it has emboldened her in her quest toward equity in education for Indigenous students. And despite her claims now that she has never said she was Mi'kmaq, Timmons has claimed membership in a Mi'kmaq band online as recently as 2018. And for at least 7 years, between 2011 and 2018, Timmons' Mi'kmaq heritage and her membership in this unrecognized band had a prominent place on her online professional CV and biographies, from speaking engagements at Canadian universities to the committee which helps select Canadian senators. This is where it starts.
It goes back to my father's great-great-grandmother, identified as Mi'kmaq in the census, and then her parents. So it's 5 generations for me.
That's back to the 1800s. But the only census CBC could find was this one, and Marie Benoit is listed as French. We also couldn't find documentation to back up this assertion in the family research she provided to CBC, the indigeneity of her ancestors 8 generations back.
In the genealogy, it notes that Boniface Benoit Sr. and Marie Boucher are both registered as Mi'kmaq, but neither us nor Stephen White could find evidence to support that. So do you know what document is being referred to?
I don't have the binders. They're in Nova Scotia at my home, my mother's home, so I don't have those binders with me now, right?
Okay.
But they would have been registered in the census, I would assume, but I don't have those documents.
And in an interview with Stephen White, who you had mentioned before, does research and is one of the foremost experts in this, he said that his research has determined that Boniface Benoit Jr. and Madeleine Minette were both 1/16th Indigenous on both sides, meaning that their daughter, Marie Benoit, was 1/16th, being your great-great-great. Does that line up with what your father's research had told you?
All I have is this document with me now, so I don't have those other documents. But, I mean, I have nothing to dispute what my father had in the genealogy.
Okay.
But we're not genealogy experts. Stephen White is.
It's a puzzle, but somebody got into the box and threw away 3/4 of the pieces.
He's a genealogist and professor at the University de Moncton. White has written a book on Acadian genealogy and happens to know this family tree by heart.
The figures are there. There's 1/16th on Boniface's side and 1/16th on Madeleine's side.
So by his interpretation, that makes Marie Benoit 1/16th and Timmons' closest Mi'kmaq relative 10 generations back. It may be the case that certain family members were accepted into Mi'kmaq communities despite not having Indigenous ancestry. Timmons' understanding of her family tree was enough for the Brador Mi'kmaq First Nation. It qualified her and her siblings as being members of their unrecognized band.
They sent me actually a membership card to the Brador Band, and at that time I did acknowledge it. I think it was 2009, around there. And then I looked into it on my own, and I didn't feel comfortable identifying as a member of a band that wasn't official or a member of a band anyway.
But in your professional CVs and bios for years, it was noted that you were a member of Brador.
Well, I removed it fairly quickly. If it was stayed, it would have been maybe on the internet or something where you put a CV and it stays forever. But I did not, definitely in the last number of years, and I never used it as an identifier.
In your biography for the Independent Senate Appointments Commission, that is a line when it says you're a member of Brador.
Okay, that would have been, I don't know the date of that, yeah.
Okay.
The Union of Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq does not recognize the Brador First Nation. The federal government says it has never spoken with the group and it is not recognized. Brador First Nation is still active today and says it will seek status.
I do want to give her the benefit of the doubt of growing up, probably hearing that, no, being told that she is part of this community or has this ancestry, and probably had no reason to question it all throughout her whole life until it was too late. But knowing better is one thing and doing better is another.
Tyler Sack is Mi'kmaq. His graduate research focused on identity construction, cultural authenticity, and decolonization. While Sack puts very little weight in blood quantum, he says identity discussion can be fraught with harm. He takes issue with allowing yourself to be misidentified by others.
It's frustrating to me to see someone misrepresenting indigeneity. By claiming to be part of a First Nation that's A, unrecognized, and then B, not being able to contextualize the relations that they have within that community or to the greater nation as a whole.
But Timmons says doors never opened for her because of her claims.
I'm not sure how I would have benefited, except in the one area was I did get the Inspire Award. And when that was offered to me, I actually turned it down. And one of the elders gave me a ribbon skirt and said that it was really important that I accept and acknowledge that this was not just for me, but acknowledging my history and past ancestry. So that's why I agreed to do it.
But did the elder know that your Mi'kmaq, your full-blooded Mi'kmaq ancestor goes back to the 1600s?
Yes.
Not the 1800s?
Yes.
Timmons says she never clarified the record on her indigeneity publicly unless she was asked. That is, until now. Timmons sent this letter to students and faculty yesterday, saying the last number of decades have been a learning experience and a journey she is still on. She says, falsely claiming Indigenous identity is categorically wrong and harms Indigenous people. That is why I make the distinction I do about my heritage. I felt I was always very clear. I recognize the changing context of the world we live in and will be more cognizant in the future of when and how I share information about my heritage and strive to make the distinction even clearer. Ariana Kelland, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, taking a look outside right now, it's dreary. We've got some fog on the go as well as we see some of this milder air out there hovering around the 0-degree mark at the moment. -7 is what it is with that wind chill. We've got winds out of the northeast around 37 kilometers per hour. They're gusting near 50 and at the airport recording a visibility of about 5 kilometers. Now, the reason why we're seeing this onshore flow is an area of low pressure that is stalled to the south of us at the moment, and this is going to bring some snow as we head through the night tonight and then into Friday. In fact, same area of low pressure. So just taking a look at what's going on right now out there. There's that onshore flow I was talking about. It's actually bringing some mild temperatures to parts of the province, particularly Lab City, and then down through the southeastern portion of the island. But the big story really at this point through the weekend will be that snow. So a special weather statement has been issued pretty much all along the northeast coast. And right now a wind warning for southern areas of the island. We're looking at those winds gusting around 80 kilometers per hour. I'll break the full forecast down coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, she was seriously injured and died weeks later, and tonight a man has been charged with her death. Police say in January they were called to a disturbance at a home on Hunts Lane in the east end of St. John's where a 55-year-old woman was seriously injured. She was taken to hospital and died 7 weeks later. Well, today a 27-year-old man was charged with manslaughter. Police say the pair knew one another. The man has been released to appear in court in mid-April. In honor of International Women's Day, about 50 people attended a rally in St. John's today. The group wants to raise awareness about the ongoing protests in Iran and what Iranian women are facing in their home country. Here now, Enrica Wilhelm has that story.
Today was just one of many rallies since Mahsa Amini died in Iranian police custody 6 months ago after being arrested for allegedly wearing her headscarf incorrectly. But today's event was special.
One of the aims to celebrate the International Women's Day is just to raise awareness for the discrimination. And Iran is one of the good sample that you can see discrimination.
While Canadians use the day to criticize ongoing issues, pay equity, harassment, Iranian women face those problems and others.
We don't know how equity would look like because we are still fighting for equality. And we know that equality is not enough, so the aim is reaching out to equity. But how we can think about equity once we are still looking for the basic, our basic rights?
There are a lot of insecurities in Iran, but here, not much. We have something like the women are always invisible, you know? So you can see it here too, but in those countries it's awful. It's really awful, you can't imagine.
Being a woman in Iran comes with many restrictions.
It's hard. It's anything but a person, not a human. I would call it sexism, most probably, definitely. We're not known as human beings, honestly. You don't feel like a human being. Why? Because you're just there, existing, and you're expected to follow your husband's or dad's footsteps.
They say life as a woman in Canada is very different.
In Iran, so we always have a special fear for talking about something, so we just irritating us, right? So just silent. But here it's totally different, and I really feel free. You know, I was walking in my country, but right now I can fly.
6 months after the protests started, Iranians at home and abroad, like here in St. John's, continue fighting for women's rights. And while they know it might take some time, they're hopeful they will reach their goals. Henrike Wilhelm, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, charges against a man accused of trying to take down a floodlight in the Battery neighborhood in St. John's have been dropped. The 32-year-old was facing trespassing and mischief charges. He told CBC News that he tried to move the controversial bright light attached to a property in the historic neighborhood, but it didn't budge. The Crown says there was no reasonable grounds for conviction. The light belonged to Outer Battery resident Colin Way, who himself was charged with mischief and for shining the light onto his neighbor's properties. The fight finally cooled down in late January when Way voluntarily turned off his lights. Well, under the snow at the Whaleback Ski Park in Stephenville lies a green initiative. The Cross Country Ski Club has new solar panels on its chalet, and it's helping pay the bills. Here Now's Troy Turner takes us there.
The snow is hard and the trails fast. But beyond the 21 kilometers of ski trails, Whaleback Nordic has undergone some change.
Two of our big focuses were making the chalet more accessible to all and making it greener. To that end, we renovated our washrooms, we renovated everything so that everything is wheelchair accessible, our rental room. We also added solar panels to our roof. We put in heat pumps. And our solar panels power the grid. We sell our power to the grid, and from that we get money to help pay for the electrical bills of the chalet.
During the winter, when the club is most active, it will draw on the provincial power grid to run the facility. During the summer months, there's more sun and therefore more solar power. The club will sell that excess power back to the provincial system.
We're hoping that the income from the solar panels will help cover, I'd say, 80 to 90% of our electrical bill for the year, which will be a big help to the club. We're a non-profit, and so any help we can get paying our bills will be great.
Ivan McDonald says the club is hoping to organize more events in the off-season, including hikes, bird watching, and biking.
We're hoping to make it into more of a four-season club so that we can appeal to more people and make more use of it.
Well, beyond the work in the chalet, the Whaleback Nordic Ski Club also has a busy season on the trails. And this weekend will host the 53rd annual Outfitters Cross Country Ski Marathon. Troy Turner, CBC News, Stephenville.
Staying with sports, there's more cash coming to upgrade sports centers in St. John's in anticipation of the 2025 Canada Summer Games. 2 tennis clubs will get a boost, but as Here and Now's Jeremy Eaton reports, that investment is about more than just the games.
With the 2023 games now in the books, promoting the 2025 games in St. John's is now in full swing.
This morning, I am pleased to announce the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts and Recreation is providing Tennis NL with $1.4 million to make improvements to the Greenbelt Tennis Club and the Riverdale Tennis Club.
For up-and-coming tennis players like 15-year-old Declan Walsh, it means great things for his game.
Extremely important to be able to improve, to get your game on top, and it will level the playing field absolutely across the country. And I want to see Tennis NL succeeding forever.
So, what does $1.4 million get you?
Riverdale gets total reconstruction of the first 3 courts. Then we're going to resurface all 6. We'll do upgraded lighting, and there's some cosmetic upgrades planned for the clubhouse down there. So it'll look polished and brand new for games.
The courts at Greenbelt will also get a massive makeover. The aging bubble will be replaced.
The Greenbelt Tennis Club went under the dome early last month, and it's a move they're very happy with.
It opened in 1989, and it was expected to last about 25 years. It's nearly 10 years past that. The bubble will expand over the first court, growing the clubhouse and making it fully accessible.
A critical piece of infrastructure. You can't compete on a world stage with tennis unless you've got a year-round facility, and this has been the only one in the province for the past 35 years.
Tennis facilities were rather inadequate in St. John's before the Summer Games, but not anymore.
Both Riverdale and Greenbelt were built for the 1977 Canada Games, which later produced a ton of great players from here, like Melissa Pine, who enjoyed success before heading to the United States on a full scholarship.
Tennis in Newfoundland has always boxed above its weight. For a small province with, few facilities. Tennis has produced numbers of national champions, international ranked players, and I think it's only going to continue to grow.
The hope is if you build it, they will come. More tennis players and bigger tournaments, that is.
There is a direct correlation between facilities investments and the growth and development of a sport through hosting events, Atlantic events, national events, and international events here in this facility.
This is the beginning of the next 35 to 50 years of another push and growth in this sport.
But that's for the up-and-coming generations. We all know the ship has sailed on this reporter's chance for making the Pro Tour.
Woo-hoo!
Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, can you believe it? Warming temperatures mean some beekeeping activity was in order in my own backyard on the weekend. I'll give you a rare sneak peek inside a winter beehive. That's just ahead before Ashley's weather.
Oh, we've got an area of low pressure stalled to the south of us. That's going to bring some snow tonight, and then again as we head towards the weekend. I'll get into the details coming up.
Weather Update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. VIP prize deadline is midnight Friday. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
Before we get to the weather, I just have a little honeybee video I want to share with you. During the winter, when temperatures drop, I wrap the beehive with insulation to keep it warm so the bees can stay warm inside. It's something that most beekeepers do. And on the weekend, with temperatures warming up, I decided to take some of that insulation off. And I have this really cool feature on my beehive. It's an observation window. And I just went to open it up really quickly just to see if I could see anything and just have a look. I was not expecting to see this, but this is what I saw when I took it off.
That is absolutely incredible. Oh, look at all those bees.
Oh, I was so excited because over the winter, you don't get to see bees like that. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't expecting them to be near the outside of the hive. I was expecting them to be, more in the center, keeping warm. So, yeah, I was really
very excited. I guess the insulation's doing its job then.
Yeah, they look great. They look healthy and warm and plentiful. Thousands and thousands of bees in there. Anyways, I just wanted to share that with you all.
Yeah, that's very cool. They're all doing great.
Yes, and the temperature warming up is a good thing for the bees.
Can you unwrap the hive now?
Yeah, I did unwrap it, yeah, so I don't want them to get too hot,
warm, yeah.
because then they might fly out of the hive.
Right.
But so I unwrapped it, and so how are the temperatures looking?
Well, they're going to stay pretty cool as far as temperatures are concerned, not nearly as cold as we have been seeing, but around the 0 degree mark, and lots of precipitation with that as well. Let's take a look at where we sat overnight, though. We only hovered around the 0 degree mark in St. John's, pretty much all of eastern Newfoundland, and a bit above 0 even across the south coast, including Stephenville at about +2 today. Up across Labrador, you drop below 0, but this is still well above where you should be sitting this time of year. That's for sure. And if you take a look at the daytime highs, look at how warm it got in Lab City today, +5, and even saw some sunshine earlier today. And then we're away from that onshore flow, so temperatures for the southwestern corner of the island as well, seeing those mild temperatures around 5 degrees Port aux Basques, Stephenville, Burgeo, and then 3 to 4 as you head a little bit further north and east to Marystown. It looks like that's where you sat today. So that is typical when we see the onshore flow along the northeast coast. Those temperatures, hovering around the 0 or 1 degree mark. Lots of drizzle in the forecast, as well as the potential even for some freezing drizzle, which is what we saw earlier today. And that's because those temperatures were a little cooler. Now, that's where we're sitting now, around 0 degrees in St. John's. Feels more like -7, though, when you factor in that wind chill. And then up across the Big Land, still sitting at 4 degrees in Lab City. But those temperatures, as you head towards the coast, hovering around the 0 degree mark, or about a degree above, and you're still looking at those wind chills into the -single digits. So what we've got going on right now, area of low pressure spinning offshore. You can see that fairly nicely with that cloud cover there, and basically just unsettled. And that's really the story as we head through the next couple of days. We do have a few flurries still working their way across the west coast, and there's likely some precipitation out there. It's just not being picked up on the radar, whether it's below it or it's just really light. So as we head through the night tonight, those temperatures are going to dip back down below 0 for the most part. Winds are going to stay brisk as well, gusting between 50 to as much as 60 kilometers per hour for most. Up across Labrador, your temperatures will be into the -single digits, with your winds generally easing, especially further east as you get away from that area of low pressure, further west as you get away from that area of low pressure. But it is going to be windy across the Avalon, southern Avalon in particular, wind warning in place. We're looking at those winds gusting around 80 kilometers per hour, but some of those exposed areas, if I go forward in time overnight tonight, you can see getting into the reds there. So between 80 to 100 kilometers per hour. But again, it will likely be in those exposed areas. That will continue through to tomorrow afternoon, and really widespread areas seeing those gusts between 60 to as much as 80 kilometers per hour, especially along the coast of Labrador as well. And they will eventually ease slightly, at least well below warning criteria for the southeast as we head through tomorrow evening. Now, as far as the forecast goes for tonight, the future tracker showing some snow for the northern peninsula along the northeast coast through central. And then again for the Avalon as we head past midnight, it looks like at this point. So we could see some accumulation from this. Generally about 2 to 5 centimeters it looks like, and then we'll see another impulse move through as we head into tomorrow afternoon, and this could bring some more snow with it. So combined with the winds, we could see some blowing snow with that as well. And that's pretty much it. So as far as the accumulations go, like I said, somewhere between 2 to 5 centimeters is certainly possible. So you may have to brush off the car tomorrow morning, especially if you're in those higher elevations, but there is still the risk of some freezing drizzle in the mix as well. So if you do see periods of freezing drizzle, those amounts will be significantly less. Here's where you're going to sit for tomorrow afternoon. Not really moving much, around 0 degrees, but again, those winds gusting upwards of about 80 kilometers per hour, at least for the first half of the day, along the northeast coast, out of the northeast as well. And then as you head towards the west coast, not nearly as warm, especially in the southwest, but you will likely see a few peaks of sun in and around Port aux Basques, at least the southwestern portion of the island, and then up across Labrador, still staying well above where you should be sitting this time of year. The potential for some flurries in the mix as well, and even a few peaks of sun. So let's look at your forecast. We'll look ahead when I come back.
You just stop for a moment and think of what buildings are named after women, what roads are named after women. Representation is really important.
Armeen Gosling was central to women in this province and the city of St. John's getting the right to vote. We'll have more on her story and how she's going to be brought to life later on Here and Now.
Armeen Gosling was central to women gaining the right to vote in Newfoundland in the 1920s, but chances are you may not know much about her. Now the Persistence Theatre Company wants to change that and bring her story to life with a life-size statue. Here Now's Heather Gillis reports.
This is Armeen Gosling. She led the women's suffrage movement in St. John's, where some women were granted the right to vote in 1921, and worked to expand suffrage in Newfoundland in 1925. She started what would become the SPCA and worked to improve child welfare and maternal health. Historian Margot Dooley says she was one of the most significant women in Newfoundland history.
She didn't just argue for votes for women. She makes this amazing statement in 1912 that no race in 1912, imagine, or sex should be denied the vote. And she did so much for others that I think it's time we do a little bit for her in retrospect.
And it's exactly what the Persistence Theatre Company is planning to do with the Raise Her Up campaign. They're halfway to fundraising $230,000 for a life-size bronze statue of Gosling in Bannerman Park. Statues of women can be found around St. John's, like these ones carrying fish flakes or this girl with an RNC officer. But there isn't a named statue of a woman in the capital city. Persistence Theatre's Jen Dion says Gosling will be the first.
It is just a drop in the ocean of rebalancing that is required when it comes to honoring the legacy of women. I mean, if you just stop for a moment and think of what buildings are named after women, what roads are named after women.
Since Gosling's time, women have been making gains in the province and the country. In 1964, a woman could finally open a bank account without her husband's signature. In 71, maternity benefits were added to EI. In 83, it was illegal finally for a man to rape his wife. And then in 1995, women made up about half of the workforce. Things Dooley remembers, especially one situation at the bank.
It just seems insane in retrospect. I couldn't get a credit card in my own name. I had to have a male signature.
It'll take a year to complete the bronze sculpture. Persistence Theatre says the process will start once they finish fundraising. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, staying with Women's Day, last month Inmarsat launched the world's most advanced satellite into space, and its regional office in Mount Pearl played a part in that. Kelly Edison is with that company. She spoke with our Jeremy Eaton about pursuing a career in tech at a time and place when it wasn't common.
So it was a bit of a journey for me. I was one of the Newfoundlanders, come from a small town, and at that time, I mean, being in technology and being a woman, it was very hard to get a job. So I actually went out west. I did the out west Calgary trip, was there for 7 years, and decided when I had a child that I didn't want to raise my daughter, my family out west. So we moved back to Newfoundland because we really missed the culture. We missed that way of being, you know, that way we were raised. And my only challenge and risk I figured was that I was going to move back here, and I was going to end up in a mom and pop type of industry, but I couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, this has been an exciting journey. Been here 17 years now, and since being here, I've now had 8 different roles, 8 different titles, and the opportunities are limitless. And the people on my team are so smart, so strong. They're roll up your sleeves kind of people that we have. They're just that what you understand Newfoundlanders truly to be. They're just so proud of what they do, and they're so proud of being a part of Inmarsat.
Did you ever think growing up in the Northern Peninsula that you would ever be involved in a company that has something to do with sending a satellite on a rocket into space?
Absolutely not. When I grew up, we didn't have iPhones. We didn't have that many computers. So that, you know, I grew up in an area as a female in the Northern Peninsula where you had a couple options. You're going to be a nurse, or you're going to be a teacher, or you work at a fish plant or something, or be a home person, right? So having that opportunity to become part of this kind of industry and to help people globally so much, mind-blowing. Never would have dreamt it.
What's changed in the last, how many years have you been involved in this industry?
It's almost 25, 30,
25?
yeah.
And what's changed 25 years ago to now?
That glass ceiling is finally being cracked, and I'm so proud to be a part of that. It's even years ago, even until recently, being a female, you're regarded as, oh, she's the HR, the soft skill side. But she doesn't really understand the true technology. So being a part of that to help change that culture, that mindset, has really been important.
What advice would you give to other young women who are thinking about getting into the tech industry?
Be brave, be strong, have courage, because you can do it. You can, no matter what type of skill set you have, what type of personality you have a place in technology.
Wasn't that long ago? You pushed through the door.
Well, the fortunate ones are nominated for another Juno Award. Up next, Catherine Allen and Andrew James O'Brien share their excitement about next week's big musical event. Local folk duo Fortunate Ones is nominated for a Juno Award this year for Contemporary Roots album. Ahead of the big show next Monday in Edmonton, the Fortunate Ones sat down with the CBC's Aoife Alaba for an interview in our Here and Now studio.
So this is your second Juno nomination. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How is this different from the first time you were nominated?
Well, I think
The first time it was all very shocking. Let me rephrase that. It was shocking this time as well. I just mean in terms of like being on the ground at the Junos was kind of a shock. It was almost like, wow, we're kind of at the door of this club now, you know? And it felt very, very new and very kind of almost overwhelming. And I think in the 6 years that have passed since that, we've grown a lot as people, as professionals, as artists. And I think there's a newfound kind of confidence that we have going into that experience. And just, I hope to be more present this time around than I was last time. It was all very, again, the shock was being there, not the nomination. And it was, yeah, just a little bit of a deer in the headlights type of situation. So this time I'm looking forward to being more present in the moment.
Yeah, totally. That was 6 years ago. So I feel like we've grown up a lot sort of since then. And yeah, it's nice to just walk in there with a bit more confidence.
Yeah, because you guys are just so good, you expected to be nominated. You weren't shocked at all.
But, and you know, another really kind of important point to this question is coming out of, on some level, the pandemic as artists and kind of looking around and knowing that we survived. When we made this record, there was no other reason for making it than just the being able to debrief and observe the experiences that we have amassed in the years leading up to it. And we didn't know if there was going to be an audience or an infrastructure to make this new record when the pandemic shifted. We just went into it trying to make this thing for its own sake and for our sake. And so to come out the other end and know that we're still a band, that the music is still resonating with people and that there's an audience for it, that really is the most important thing. And the nomination, of course, is incredible, but it really is just that validation in knowing that what we're doing is still possible.
You've touched a bit on the fact that you started creating this album during the pandemic. What was that process like for you?
The process this time around was actually, I don't know, kind of life-saving in a way. During the pandemic, we were really lucky to house sit for friends of ours in English Harbor out by Trinity.
It wasn't that long ago. You pushed through the door and came in from the cold.
And it was a time, you know, we were isolated anyway. And we went to this beautiful Saltbacks house in English Harbor, and it made the isolation a little more purposeful. You know, I feel like gazing out across the ocean will kind of do that and lends itself to creativity. So we kind of squirreled away there and demoed and worked with our producer on these songs. And we were kind of really able to live inside the songs for a period of time, a couple of summers. And I don't know, yeah, I feel like it pulled me out of what could have been just a super depressing time, and was ultimately, but it just made that time more purposeful and allowed us to be able to create in such an inspiring environment.
That sounds really cool, because then that means you were forced to isolate, but then you kind of chose isolation, which made it
I mean, ultimately, when you look back on it in hindsight, it was a particularly privileged experience. You know, in Newfoundland, in those early days, everything was locked down so much, but we kind of had it under control at that time so that we could freely go around the bay. And we did have these friends who couldn't make it to their summer home. You know, a lot of people had a really hard time and are continuing to feel the residual effects of all of that. We were very lucky, and we definitely are reminded of that now. With all of this great news that's happening, I have reflected on how lucky we were to be given the opportunity at all.
But that being said, I mean, it does, I guess, need to be put out there that, you know, live music right now does still need to be supportive, and if people are able to get out to shows, they need to do that, because it's really a critical moment, I think, for musicians. Touring is still really hard and it's getting more expensive, so I feel like it's a really important time for, you know, if you're fans out there and you love music, it's a really good time to show that support.
Yeah. Talking about live music, Junos is happening, and what are you guys most looking forward to on that night of the award night?
I think it's exciting this time around because we're bringing a full band, and I just love the camaraderie that travel brings. and you know, everyone in the band is really excited. We're talking about it every day, and just also seeing friends and colleagues that we haven't had an opportunity to see in a bunch of years, getting on the ground and just feeling the excitement of the awards week, and just getting to experience that with our friends, and our management are coming. It's just a really nice kind of celebratory moment that we're going to try to revel in for a few days.
Definitely excited to celebrate.
Well, if you need anyone to play a cowbell for you, I am definitely open and available.
100%. And
We do need
yes,
more.
yes, definitely, and we'll get a ticket booked for you very
Yeah,
shortly.
great. Send it to my email.
100%.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. Had a great time talking to you, and good luck with the Junos.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And the Junos are being handed out Monday evening in Edmonton. Several other artists from this province are nominated for awards, and we'll have plenty of coverage of Canada's Music Awards in the coming days. Yao Antwi Adjei moved from Ghana to St. John's to study, not to stay. But today he's an active member of his community and a co-owner of the 1949 barber shop in St. John's. Now he's being recognized by community members as a CBC Black Changemaker. Have a look.
It's known by a lot of people that barbers are almost like therapists. You have to be a good listener if you want to do barbering to a level that we are now. Yeah. Hello, my name is Yao Antwi. I'm from Ghana and a Black Changemaker. I schooled in Ghana up to university level, and then I moved to Canada back in 2013 to do my master's. And I'm a barber by profession. Yeah, that's Yao. And an entrepreneur as well. I've been cutting hair for quite a long time, since I was like 11 or 12. My uncle used to cut hair, so whenever that I finish school, I ran straight to where he cuts hair, try to clean around, and he will give me some tutorials. Just show me a few things. And thank God I was a very creative person, so it wasn't difficult for me to pick up the things that he tried to teach me. Back home, being a barber is a preserve for either a truant or non-educated. People don't get into barbering after going through all the levels of education. So it's hard to get into that. But when I moved to Canada, it was a different situation here. It's something that you get satisfaction from if you do well. It's something that pays well if you are good at what you do. I don't think cutting hair requires a lot of philosophy, but dealing with people in general, you need a bit of understanding what they are thinking and try to put yourself in their shoes and know what is good to do.
And to meet more of the Black Changemakers from Atlantic Canada, you can head to our website, visit cbc.ca/Black Changemakers. So now it's time for a look at the long-range forecast. What's in store for us?
Snow, and it looks like lots of it for parts of the island anyway.
Okay.
Let's take a look at what's going to happen as we head into Thursday evening. So look at that area of low pressure offshore. That's the one that's currently stalled south of us, but it's going to retrograde as we head through the day on Friday, and that's going to bring some snow, it looks like. So it should start into the afternoon hours. It looks like it'll bring some snow even up across parts of coastal areas of Labrador, but particularly from essentially Green Bay, White Bay through to the Avalon is where we should see the majority of the snow. It's going to get fairly heavy as we head into the evening hours on Friday and continue through the night. Now, temperatures are going to play a big role in the snow this time because they're going to be hovering around the 0 degree mark or maybe even a degree or two above. And that means what does fall is going to be very heavy, it's going to be very dense, and it's going to fall fairly quickly, it looks like at this point. Now, it's also going to be accompanied by some fairly strong winds as well, as this area of low pressure gets closer. So between 60 to as much as 80 km/h winds. But the fact that the temperatures are relatively mild, around the 0 degree mark, and the snow is going to be very heavy, it should limit the blowing snow potential in this case. So as we head into Friday evening, there you can see that area of low pressure still sticking around, and even into Saturday afternoon. Now it is going to pull away, and we may see this end as some drizzle, in fact, into the afternoon hours on Saturday, which may limit the amount, but it is still looking like that will stick around right into the afternoon hours and eventually even into the evening. for the easternmost areas of the island. Now, temperatures will be a little bit above zero as we head into Saturday, between 1 and about 3 degrees across the island. And then across Labrador, you're looking at your temperatures somewhere between about -5 in Lab City and then above zero again towards the coast. So how much snow are we talking about? Well, here's some early indications. About 15 or more centimeters falling from Green Bay, White Bay through to the Northern Avalon, from the Great Northern Peninsula, I should say, and through to the Avalon, the rest of the Avalon anyway, we're looking at about 5 to 15 centimeters of snow. Long range forecast puts us above zero as we get into Monday. Same thing for central and western Newfoundland, gray with the potential for some snow as well sticking around. And then for eastern Labrador, we're looking at some sunshine by the time we get into Sunday. Monday looking a bit unsettled with some flurries. And then for western Labrador, your temperatures are going to be below zero, but just barely. Now, this is a great shot. I love the clouds and the blue sky in this photo, along with the snow. Wow. Just a beautiful day in Pasadena. Diane shared that great shot with us. If you have any weather photos, send them to Facebook, Twitter, or email them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Wow, what a great shot.
It is.
And wow, what a difference between the temperatures in Labrador now and what they've been for most of the winter. It's really quite something.
It's warm.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
Well, that's it for us. Thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us. Hope you can join us again tomorrow.
Good night.